Yeah, I think so. One of the things that Web3 does really well is incentives. When we do a point system in Web3, it's much closer to real money. People are incentivized effectively through tokens, airdrops, and more. And what we've seen over the last, I'd say, a year and a half is the prevalence of incentives to drive users to games. Axie Infinity arguably did this when they launched a long time ago, just with the incentives they had for playing the game, and we've seen that evolve over the past couple of years. So everyone on stage here has had some experience launching these, observing these, consulting businesses on how to do this effectively. So today you should hopefully learn how to do this for yourself, what to look out for, and more. So guys, why don't we start with introductions? Wills, go first.
Hi, I'm Wills. I'm the partnerships lead at Starnet. We're building out a decentralized ad network to sort of address the problems that currently exist in the advertising space, which is very prevalent in games because a lot of how games monetize and how games attract their users has been dictated by the way that things are functioning on that end, on the ad tech side of things, as opposed to ad tech being defined by the game. So I'm excited to dig into sort of why that is and how we can sort of solve those problems.
I'm Pasquale, co-founder and CMO at Ragnarok Games, a Swiss gaming studio. We're building BloodLoop, a third-person shooter, a third-person hero shooter that's up and coming in 2025.
Hi, my name is Omar. My friends call me OG, founder and CEO of Games.gg, a Web3 gaming platform that has just over 1 million users and something like 500 plus games. We've been building in this space for the last 3 years, mainly focusing on filling that gap of content and education around Web3 games, and are they good, are they not good, how to get good at them, if they are good. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be on stage with a game and not a game to chat about the topic.
Yeah, we have a good mix here. I think actually, Pasquale, I want to start with you. As a game, I've watched you build over the past couple of years, and I've really enjoyed that experience. And this past year, I think you started your first incentives campaign. Can you tell us why and how it went overall?
Yeah, so when we started building BloodLoop, we knew that given we were up and coming in the market and we had to establish our own awareness and the fact that people had to know about us being on the market, we knew that we had to kind of build in public, and that's where we started from. From the ground up, we kind of came to market, letting people know about our development stage. And that's how we build our initial community, our initial following of people that were interested in the product that we were dealing with. At some point, we had to, one way or another, we felt like we had to reward the users that have been with us since the beginning, and at the same time, we had to come to market with our first closed betas, closed private testing in reality, to get a hold of how the game development was going, get feedback from the user, and start acquiring a piece of information that were vital for us to develop the game furthermore. I feel like incentives for us are a way to get this type of information. As a gaming company, you either pay a company to do QA on your product and to intensively do QA on your product, and that costs quite a lot. Whether incentives is something that you can pair well when you're still building to get both things at the same time. You get onboarding, you get people support. There are people that are actively looking for incentives on the market and playing games for that. And at the same time, it's basically a paid activation to get information and feedback about your game. That's why we did our first, we call it, it is called play to airdrop in the market right now. So you get people to play your game, they play for an X amount of time, they complete certain quests or tasks that you want to, and you reward them with an amount of your token. That's what we did. We did our first season back in, I would say 3 months ago now, 4 months ago. And that was for us a great success as we obtained over 15,000 players for our first private beta testing, closed private build in reality for 6 days straight with 80% retention day over day. And through that, we managed to capture most of the feedbacks that we needed to make sure that our next build will be even better than the last one.
Yeah. Is there anything you would do differently?
I would change the way we distributed the rewards. One thing that a lot of games are doing is leveraging the incentives at the top of the funnel. So for awareness, we are on the market, we offer you tokens, come to us, just come and play and you get the reward because you downloaded the game, played a couple of matches, you got rewarded. I feel like incentives should be, yes, used as the first level, like you need to use them a bit as for awareness, but they should be lower down the funnel in order to increase the retention. So I would change the way they're distributed as to rewarding players that are retaining in the game, coming day by day, actually engaging with the deep systems of the product itself rather than just rewarding them because they played a couple of matches in the beginning. And I think that's where the space is going anyways. Pirate Nation is a great example with what they did with their long play-to-airdrop season. And I think that's where we're going as well with the next seasons and the next activation we're doing.
Okay, great. Wills, I feel like you have a good comment on that, but I want to go back high level first and ask you guys, Omar, like, what do you see incentives playing a role in getting your first players at a high level?
I think what's key is to understand that like not every player is the same. So you have different regions, you've got different types of players. Some players just want to, play the game because it's fun. Some players want to play the game because it's competitive and, they want to dominate. And other players want to play the game because, they want something out of it. I think when it comes to incentives, it really just depends on you understanding who your target audience is and speaking to them in their language. So for example, a game like Off the Grid that is high spec, you need a PC, can't really run it on, mobile or like low-end laptops. You don't really go aggressively into come play the game right now, you'll get tokens, because 99% of the time that's not going to work. Versus like a mobile game that's super low lift, super basic, casual, whatever it is, and you're just trying to get downloads, you're trying to get people to like just jump in. Incentives can play a huge role there. So I think it depends on the target audience and it depends on the type of incentive. So there is obviously the tokens, but there's also like NFTs as incentives, there's cosmetics, there's achievement badges that are either SBTs or whatever it is. So there's so many different, I think, ways to incentivize. What tends to happen is I think games fall into the trap of thinking that I just need to launch a token, give out my token, and the players will come. Most of the time, that'll just attract a lot of people that want to extract the value and then jump into the next game, especially if your game is not fun. But once you understand that there's a mindset to it and you got to kind of look at everything that you have in your arsenal as an incentive. So maybe it's Ninja playing your game on stream, like that's an incentive. Maybe it's people thinking the game is cool and inviting you to join the lobby and run like a 3-man team. Maybe it's an NFT. Maybe it's you get the first ever minted badge that says you completed this level. Like there's so many different ways. So I think there's this old school mindset that I think is starting to change over time, where more game studios are realizing, pause, let's launch the token a bit later, but like what can we do now? And you see that with NFT collections, for example. Like most games drop an NFT first, and then that gets perks, it accrues value, and then at some point they're like, we'll airdrop holders tokens. So yeah, it's been a bit different lately.
Yeah, and that's what you guys did, right?
Yeah, so I mean, we had our platform was live for like maybe 2 years before we announced anything token related. And for the most part, we were giving out actually incentives outside of our ecosystem. So it was like games giving us stuff to give away. So that, the way the value model works basically is we had users, we'd send them to the games would give us, incentives to give to the users, and it was like a closed loop every single time. And the reason it worked so well was we're, chain agnostic, we're genre agnostic, we're everything agnostic pretty much. So if I get players from Shrapnel, I can funnel them into BloodLoop. If I get players from BloodLoop, I can funnel them to Off the Grid and so on and so forth. And there's that snowballing effect. It was only like 2 years later that we were like, okay, we've got a pretty solid user base. What if we launch a token? And then obviously you got more users coming in, and maybe some of them stick around, maybe some of them don't. But I think if you start rewarding retrospectively, you're far more likely to, to your point, you're far more likely to reward the high quality users. Because we were basically like rewarding people that were diamond and gold and silver on our platform, which was like years of just grinding XP without expecting anything in return. So we never said we were going to do a token until we did. And then when we did, people were like, can I swear? I don't know.
Yeah.
I was gonna say fuck. So people were like, fuck, I gotta like farm this thing. But it was too late to farm. Right. It's like we were doing airdrop in 2 months, and it's like you didn't really have much time left. So yeah, that's what we did, and I think, for the most part, I'd say it worked out pretty well. I know a lot of projects did airdrops, and maybe they have different experiences. We did like a fully unlocked 100% TGE airdrop, and for good reason. I think if you want to get like the paper hands out, might as well get them out day one. And then the people that stick around from day one as well, right? Yeah. So what ended up happening is a lot of people staked and continued to be part of the ecosystem, and like they'd actually defend us in general chat. Like you'll see Discord, people are like, oh, I only got like 10 tokens, and someone will be like, I got 10,000 because I'm not an idiot like you, and I was part of this ecosystem for a while. So yeah, I think it comes with its ups and downs, but it's definitely a tool. Like in my opinion, a token is almost like a different product. right? Like it's a marketing tool that you have to then leverage and use however you think works best.
Yeah, and you mentioned getting the paper hands out that can also build potential resentment in some cases. I think Wills, you mentioned something about this in our talks. So Wills, let's go to you. What at a high level, like how do you see incentives playing a role in getting your first 100,000 players or just launching a game in general?
Yeah, I think just to kind of riff off Omar's kind of final point of like a token is a different product, and I think a lot of games in Web3 have used a token and to try and attract a larger gaming audience. But what you're going to get is a crypto audience. And you have to be conscious of, you want to get 10,000 players. Well, let's ask questions first. What are the kind of 100,000 players? What's the first 100,000 players you want in your game? Do you want it to be crypto-focused people? Is that the kind of audience that you're trying to build? Because once you open the floodgates on, incentivized users, it's a very different market than sort of your traditional, playing for fun gamers. We run user acquisition campaigns a lot, and we dabbled in incentivized advertisements. So it's like play this game and get 3 gems, or and you stack up enough gems and you get an Amazon gift card. What we constantly saw was people would come in and they'd want low CPIs to drive installs. But then you get to the problem of, wait, no one's sticking around for the game. And it's like, yeah, because you paid for a low CPI just to get the install. And, incentivization is very much a you get what you pay for kind of bargain. And it can definitely, in the long run, hurt the community that you're trying to build. Because, let's take a couple steps back. In traditional gaming, you pay to play the game. It's a very sort of novel notion now that people should be expecting rewards and incentives in order to play the game. I think that we just heard Theo from Off the Grid talk, and he has a very focused view of this, that like the game needs to attract people on its own merit, and then when you build in underlying incentive structures to keep people there, that's how you ensure that you're attracting the right kind of audience, building the right kind of community, and incentivizing them to do the right kind of things, as opposed to just come in, install, and leave.
Yeah, I think we'll continue on that topic. It seems like everybody here shares this opinion that incentives are really powerful, but they can also be a risk. They can also lead to the wrong kind of actions. I think Wills and I were talking, and I think a lot of games in this space use incentives to drive download numbers because that's marketing for them to say, hey, we're going to be successful. We have 100,000 players. Nobody knows that they don't come back or that they're all leaving immediately after the token. It's a way for them to build up a reputation of potentially being successful. So instead, let's talk about like how do you actually be successful long term. So instead of driving high-level download numbers, each of you has mentioned retention. What does a good incentive campaign for retention look like, in your opinion? And Pasquale, you said you would have changed some of that, changed the actions. Can you go a little deeper on what you would have changed?
Yeah. So on our first build, the amount of room that we had to build a deep down incentive campaign was extremely limited. But the way I would focus on our next activation will be, one, focusing on getting users to actually engage with the core pillars of our blockchain components. So the reality is that whenever you give incentives and you only focus on the Web3 user base, you will get crypto users. So you might as well get them to actually leverage your crypto systems and get them deep down in what you're building as your blockchain rails for your product. So I will definitely incentivize crafting, an example in our game, marketplace transaction, volume generated, which is not just play and get money, but is spend money to get money, which sounds interesting in a way, but user will know that given the more volume they generate, the more rewards they will get, they will be kind of justified to interact more with the ecosystem. And at the same time, I would focus a lot for people that cannot afford to spend, because there are gamers in Web3. It's strange to say, but there are actual players in Web3 that might just want to play a game. Incentivize learning about the game, not just getting into a lobby, play your 5v5 match for 10 minutes, for 8 hours straight, spamming games and that's it. I would incentivize learning how the game works, learning the mechanics, learning in our case, the abilities or the synergies between heroes or how you can get better in a map. And there are multiple ways into how you can track that as a game, and you can reward the users for that. Because when the play to airdrop is over, when your incentive campaign is over and the activation it's kaput and there's no more incentive, the people that learned about your product and spent so much time willing to understand how you built it might as well stick around because they invested their time and not just just playing around for the sake of having rewards from the get-go. And I think that's the way we're going to focus anyways in our next campaign. That's our goals for the next seasons of our testing, our next tournaments, and everything else.
Yeah, Omar, I think the GG platform has education as an aspect, right? Are they incentivized, and what does that look like on your platform?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you know how this plan works out because it hasn't fully played out yet. But the way we broke down our airdrop was there was day one retrospectively rewarding users for the last 2 years, and then there were 2 tranches that were broken down into phase 2 and phase 3. The idea was basically in phase 1 we were mainly a content platform with quests to interact with games as kind of a UA funnel. So you only could really reward those aspects because they were the live aspects on the platform. We launched our token back in April. Today there's the vault, which basically lets you invest in upcoming gaming projects. There is the battle pass that we just launched like 2 days ago, which lets you get rewards from different games for completing missions and getting XP on the platform. There's a lot of new stuff on the platform. The idea was to continue rewarding users for doing what we wanted them to do on the platform long term. So the way we broke it down was like, okay, phase 1, you have to do this to get rewarded, but phase 2, it'll be a whole new different set of things, and we'll even reset XP to get people kind of playing again from scratch, essentially. I think having a similar approach, I'm not saying it's the best approach, I told you, I'll let you know how it works out when it rolls out, but having that approach in mind means that you're aligning incentives, right? Like it's not a conflict of interest where like you want download numbers but you're not willing to give something back, or the players want money out of it but they're not. Like it's very much aligned, because if you want to be rewarded, you have to do what I want you to do, which is interact with these new different kind of aspects of the platform. And then phase 3, who knows what that's going to include at some point. Things will change, but the idea was to keep you hooked into the ecosystem. And to your point about having content, like the first thing we had on the platform was content. So even if we strip everything away, we remove the quests, remove the battle pass, like you still have a content database to go back to where you could just read about BloodLoop or figure out what Avalanche is doing with gaming. And I think that at its core is actually what people know us for.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like games.gg is a platform that gives me information about Web3 gaming. It's not a platform where I get, cool NFTs or something like that. Like you could go to Magic Eden, you can, play a bunch of these games, but it's if you're coming for that purpose and then you're getting something along the way, then I think the journey is a bit more fun. Yeah. And you're a bit less likely to be upset about like not getting 20 tokens and getting 17 or whatever.
Right.
It is.
Yeah, your business is not incentives, it's a content platform at its core.
Yep.
Yeah. And the incentives are just driving loyalty and sometimes acquisition for you. Wills, what would you say is a good way to use incentives in a smarter way where you're not just incentivizing that top of funnel, you're really building community or making sure that these people are going to stick around for you?
Yeah, I think I think you alluded to it earlier with this idea of encouraging people to learn the game and get skilled. I mean, what we're talking like the base. Like the traditional incentive system is like a progression system, something that incentivizes, like when I'm looking in, I've been playing Witchfire recently, it's a roguelike, and they have a big wheel of all of the different guns, and as you do a different mission, you can see what the next unlock is going to be, and that's the incentive, is the shiny new thing in front of me. That doesn't even have to be a financial asset. You were talking about getting people to learn the game. I think achievements can do a really good job of that as well. Like if I'm looking through the achievements and it's like pull off a 360 with this character, and it's like, how the hell would I do that? And it encourages me to like one, go and get that achievement, but two, to go and reach out to community members and engage with platforms like G3 and educational content the incentive is one, the skill, two, the achievement, and three, the ability to engage with that community. And at no step in that process that I just outlined have you needed to actually pay the user. And I think that being a little, you have to be very sort of stringent with how you decide to engage financially with the user. Because as soon as you go down the rabbit hole of giving a little bit here, a little bit there, that's what users are going to come to expect. And I think a really cool system, and I think you started with this, was the idea of incentivizing purchases. A very common tactic in mobile free-to-play games is the idea of the piggy bank. You download the game for free, and as you play and level up and acquire a resource, you slowly build to a certain threshold where you unlock a limited time purchase. And it's like for $5, you get what is in the store as $20 of value. And like, let's remember here, these are like in-game assets, so they don't really have any value. Their value is $5 because that's what they're expecting people to purchase it for. The only reason it's listed in the store as $20 is so that you're incentivized to buy that package. So I think that there's cool ways that you can go about it. I think it's a shame that most free-to-play games have to resort to these almost, I don't want to say malevolent, but misguiding monetization strategies to get people in for 5 to 10 minutes, because a lot of free-to-play games, they just want you to buy the piggy bank and they don't really have a game built out afterwards because that's what works. And I think it's a shame that these are the kind of strategies that need to be used, and that comes back to a sort of fundamental problem with the value that games are generating and how that's being redistributed to them. And I think that in order to change that up, we need more games to expect more of their players in a strange sense, and take pride in the community that they're engaging in and really focus in on that and know that their community has value and will bring value, because without players a game doesn't really exist.
I'm just glad you stopped playing Space Marines.
I didn't stop. I just didn't bring my PC.
Never mind.
All right, I think each of you has mentioned community at least once or twice, and so if everyone in the audience is thinking about running incentives, how do you prepare on the community side to deal with the influx of users and, again, kind of make sure that you have the resources ready to engage them and draw them in? Like, did you hire a community manager for this launch? Tell me about that, maybe Pasquale.
I have PTSD from our play to airdrop.
Yeah.
It's been 7-10 days of, I have my team there. They were all online. I will say 18 hours a day just getting in the chats, and it's not like we were not prepared. We had the full moderation team, 10 people there, our community managers, community moderators, and there was a lead on top of that as well, but we just couldn't handle the amount of people coming into Discord and chatting. And I think that's where Discord is a bit of a failure point for this type of activation, because it's hard to redirect them to a frequently asked question before they start asking the question in the chats. People don't want to read stuff. They will just ask it out, even if 3 messages above, there's the reply to what they wanted to know.
Yeah.
So it's hard in that sense. The one thing I would do differently, and that's one thing I would advise, is to have as much information as possible about the campaign directly in the game. So the first thing they will do most likely is download the game and get to see it. A pop-up plays a huge role there. Just inform them about what's going to happen. So that whatever you can take off your moderator's shoulders, that's important. Because you will have people writing tons of messages at every single point. I sent over 10,000 messages in 2 weeks just for the play to airdrop on Discord. And that was crazy. But yeah, at the same time, it's great because you start seeing people actively engaging, being interested in what you're building. They will start asking questions about your product. So it's a good feeling, but it's also extremely bad to handle. It's really hard to handle.
Yeah, I imagine you get 100,000 players in 1 week, and they're all there asking questions about the campaign. I think that suggestion of making it in-game pop up is
and
great.
Gamers are entitled.
Yeah.
They will brag or they will flame you down about every single thing that they feel like it's not good, even if they have no idea on what's going on in the behind. So whatever you can put down and just let them read instead of replying, it's good. But at some point, you also have to take the hard stance of replying, not being so gentle towards them.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they will definitely take over you and your moderation team. I had a couple of people just go away from the chats and just fire themselves out because they couldn't handle the amount of hate or questions or repeated questions they were getting, but they did nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Omar, you guys were live for years.
Yeah, slightly different experience, I guess. I'm sorry that happened the way that it did. I think the trick is to over-communicate and to really manage expectations throughout. So whenever our community found out that we were doing a token, we have this weekly AMA that we do in Discord, and we were constantly, repeating that this is how it's going to play out. You should expect a lot of new people to come in. You should expect a lot of negativity that might be coming in. What we need from you guys is to champion us, because you've been here for quite some time and you know why we're doing the things that we're doing. I think our experience was slightly different because of that. I remember, when we did our airdrop, a lot of new people would jump into Discord and type in general chat for the second time ever. And someone from our community would screenshot that they only have one message, because they'd be like, I've been here for months and how did I only get 10 tokens? And they'd be like, you have one message in Discord, shut up. And they'd immediately say fair play and walk away, right? It was really managed expectation, because no one was expecting to make $1 million. No one was expecting to, get super rich. No one was expecting to buy a car with their airdrop. But at the same time, people were expecting to get rewarded to a certain extent. And it was interesting to see. It also depends on the, person getting the airdrop. Because some people were like, oh my God, I can't believe I just got $100 worth of tokens. And then others were like, oh my God, I can't believe it was only 3K. Right? It's completely different mindsets across the board. And on our side, I mean, luckily we didn't have to hire anyone extra. We didn't have to do anything that was kind of too different from what we were doing already, because we just had an FAQ, channel message thing set up, and all the information was there. If anyone asked anything about the token, we just linked them, the green paper as we called it or whatever. And so I'd say it was definitely hectic for sure. It was definitely a lot of work. It was definitely a lot of, information. You had to kind of, if you don't reply in minutes, if not even seconds, you're immediately avoiding and ignoring the community. So you have to really be careful. But once you've had that culture nurtured in your own kind of community, you really start having champions in your community that speak on your behalf.
Yeah.
So 99% of the time, the conflicts were resolved without us. So it would basically be someone saying, I'm silver, why did I get this much? And then someone from the community would be like, because, this is the bracket, you fall in this tier, so on and so forth. And it's diffused immediately. And we only then jump in if someone goes out of line, you gotta ban someone, kick them out of Discord, whatever it is. That's a completely different scenario. But most of the time, I think it just goes down to over communicating. Because the worst thing you could do when you're doing an airdrop, and some projects have done that, is just disappear, right? Say, I'm gonna step away, I'll formulate a message, I'll come back in 3 hours. That's the worst thing you can do. The best thing you can do is just show up and be like, okay, we'll figure it out and come back in a little bit. But the worst thing you could do is expect people to wait for you to think about something you should have thought about months ago.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see how you were in a different situation and have built up a community for years to be your champions. That's definitely something to consider. I mean, when is the right time to run incentives? In fact, after I ask Wills this question, we should talk about that. Wills, what do you think? Did we already cover you on how to use or how to prepare your community prior to running incentives?
Yeah, when token was.
Yeah, right.
I think, well, to that point, I think you brought up a really interesting point about why gamers being entitled and mean. Well, why are gamers entitled? It's because we keep giving them free things, and they keep expecting free things. We've made our bed full of incentives, and now we have to lie in it, and the results in the community and the expectations that creates. I think engaging with preparing your community for incentives, I think I could just echo all of Omar's points. Really, it's just a matter of managing expectations and ensuring you're staying over-applying, being super active. And just because he brought up Space Marine, I'm gonna, use them as an example. There's a game that came to market, and they've done a really good job. When you log into Space Marine, there's a little thing that says, hey, you get 150 of the little coins if you join our community thing, and that gets you a free little pauldron and a free little helmet. So you go and you do that, and what you see when you get there is a community ideas board where people are posting the things that they want to see in the game, and developers are engaging with it and moving stuff around to be like, hey, we've seen this, that this has got a lot of traction. We're looking into it. And even just that light acknowledgement of the community and the things that they're asking for is huge. I've spent hours just going through the board kind of every day to see what's popping. And as you said, the community begins to self-moderate. Sometimes I'll see an idea and the first comment will be, hey, this idea is actually much better in the other thread and has been moved to the, like, we're looking into it category. And, you know, as soon as people start to feel that connection and that investment in the game, like they're a part of the building process, that's a whole new experience in and of itself. I think, you know, bringing people in and, you know, getting early access and game development experience and, you know, insight is something that can be used to incentivize people, because I think it's very it's understated how much people care about games and care about the processes that go into making games. And, you know, you will receive so much love from your community if you allow them to be a part of that process with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you tweeted that? Have you tweeted that?
About to.
All right, you should. That's a great one. Yeah.
Such a fangirl.
Explain. I mean, that's great. Yeah, I think about Off the Grid. You know, they haven't run a major incentive program, but within the game, one of the first things that you can do is download the companion app in exchange for a hex. You get a little loot box, you get a taste of what that's like, and the companion app is another amazing community building tool because it helps you find people to play with, gives you information, stats, so that's great. I think we wanted to talk a little bit about, like, when is the right time. And we probably touched on this a little bit with each of you, but, you know, Omar, for example, like, how did you choose 2 years in that was the right time for an incentive campaign? Was it like the market is all about these incentive campaigns, or was it the right time in your business, and how did you decide?
I think there's no such thing as the right time. It's essentially it's whenever you're ready is how I kind of look at it. People that try to time the market often fail in doing so, and when we were launching our token, actually a lot of, you know, people around me were saying that we should wait because the market was going to get better in summer, and, like, we know how that went. And so, yeah, sometimes it just goes down to, like, your gut instinct of, I feel like we're ready. Like, if we were to go live tomorrow, I feel like, you know, we'd be okay. Because you never know, like, you might wait for a better market, but now the market's great, everything's doing great, and you're no longer, you know, as interesting anymore because there's like 100 different options. Or you might say, like, let's do it in the peak bear, but, like, in the peak bear, there's, like, no liquidity, no one's paying attention, no one cares. And so timing it is a bit more about you as a founder and as a team than it is about, like, external conditions. I think obviously, yeah, they play a role. And I know now teams, like, that are trying to get, for example, when you specifically talk about tokens, like, trying to get listed on certain exchanges, it costs like 5, 10, maybe even times more than earlier in the year. And I think that's something to consider, because, like, if you wait, the longer you wait, the more you end up paying. But more than anything, and, you know, this is evident in projects like Xborg and so on and so forth, like, there's always a way to kind of figure out how you want to do your launch, regardless of external conditions, but you need to be ready. Because if you launch and you're not ready, everyone can tell. Like, we see so many examples of, like, why are you doing this? You know, like, you ask the project, like, why did you launch the token? It makes absolutely no sense. You can't use it for anything. You can't spend it on anything. People, like, you're literally launching something only for people to sell it. And then the chart looks like it's made for only people to sell it. So yeah, it's more inwards reflection than it is external conditions.
Yeah, and maybe going a little deeper on that, what made you feel ready? I mean, it sounds like you had your product was actually ready and they could use the token, and I assume there was a community aspect.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think we were quite far along in our journey. So we had probably around 300 to 400K at the time, pre-token. We were getting, like, steady DAUs regardless of what we were doing. All of our quest activations with, like, the biggest games were doing really well. We already kind of built some of the syncs within our ecosystem, and it was more so of just, like, what if we switched this in-game, you know, kind of equivalent of having a currency that's off-chain to something that's on-chain, and what if we were able to then, you know, move it across different games. Something I didn't touch on is, like, for example, the NFT, which I remember you minted yourself. Like, that was a way for us to get into games, because now our IP could actually get into some of these games. And today, I don't know, there's like 30 plus games that have our gamers collection in some way, shape, or form, and you can't do that without, you know, having something that you can pull off chain and validate instantly on the spot. So it was a lot of different factors. I don't think we would have launched if we didn't feel like there was a community to launch to, but I also don't feel like we would have launched if we didn't feel like the product could sustain the incoming community. So it's a bit of a balance between the two. I think it felt right, to be completely honest. Like when we started having the conversations back in January, it just felt like, you know, if we did this, it wouldn't be too weird, and I think people would appreciate it. And it's actually, you know, to my earlier point about not launching like in the craziness of a bull market, we wanted our community to be on the journey with us on the way up as well. Because like if you launch at the very top, then there's not really much room to grow from there. But if you kind of like launch and, you know, the community rides the wave with you a little bit, people make money, people don't make money, you get new users, you lose some users, I think there's a sense of like appreciation, right? It's like you're part of this. You were actually here, you know, day one. You were here when you were like Diamond, season 0, whatever it is. So that played a role.
Yeah. Pasquale, what about you? I watched you build for what, like 3 years. And so how did you decide that that was the time?
The first and foremost reason was for us the fact that we were product ready. As in, our game is of course not live yet. It's not always open to be played, but we were in a stage where we had to get the game on the market, as I told you before, to collect feedback. Play-to-earn jobs for games are not always the best user acquisition campaigns or strategies that you want to run. And so as a company, you need to time the fact, you need to understand that you're giving away money, it's not giving away just air. So when you give out tokens, you should see them as you giving out money out of your bank, out of your treasury. So when we give out anything, we always plan it in a way that we get something back. In our case, it was like, now we need information, we need feedback, and the product is at a stage where we either go to market, we know that we can get things back to back to back to back, in order that there's always something going on up to a point where we're live, the token is there, it's already being traded, people are holding it, and over time they can start doing new things with it. And so being product ready, as Omar said, is definitely the biggest and most important part of that. And at the same time, in our case, it was also about the community. We had, and we still have, a very vibrant holder and general community that was just interested into getting into the opportunity of holding our assets and just getting it out to the market. We kind of debated multiple times whether we wanted to launch our token or not, whether we want to wait and just go game first, token after, token first, game after. The community was vocal, even if we had not the same amount of things as other games, or we had things that were still being built. They wanted it out. They were vocal about it, and that's what kind of guided us to the point where we felt safe doing it, because we knew that there were people that were backing us up.
Yeah.
Overall, a usual gaming token has 5,000, 6,000 holders. There's not many people trading gaming tokens nowadays. So if you feel like you have at least 4, 5, 6,000 people that will back you up, then you should feel safe about going to market as of now.
Yeah.
To at least sustain your operation on the token side and not have to worry about it as a new product that you need to keep up. A lot of games fail on that. They release the token, and now they cannot manage both things at the same time because token becomes too much of a burden, because price go down, community are sending you hate messages, and you have no idea on what to do with it, and you start pushing out products that have no sense just for the sake of getting the token up, and it will not go up.
Yeah.
You have to have a plan before you do anything on that side.
That makes sense. Well, we have just 2 minutes left. I'm wondering, like, if anyone's in the audience thinking about this, hopefully they've learned something here that can help them, but is there anywhere, like where should developers go to learn more about this kind of strategy? I know GG has some articles, but like, are there consultants? Like, who do you talk to if you don't know what you're doing in this area yet?
A lot of people. I think, you got to kind of be open-minded and willing to listen to a lot of different perspectives, and you need to also understand that everyone's got an opinion, and that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. Like, sometimes you'll get terrible advice. We've seen, games follow step by step the playbook of an advisor or whatever, and then like absolutely bomb on TGE day. And so I think you kind of just need to be out there talking to market makers, talking to some of your investors. Like, that should be the reason why you got investors involved in the first place, to use their expertise, because they've probably invested in other projects that did well. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I don't think there's like a go-to source. Like if you ask me how we launched and I'll tell you and you do the exact same thing, you might get a completely different result. But I think having the full picture and context about all of the things you need to consider, like people underestimate having your coin on CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko day one, very simple things, having liquidity on a DEX, etc. So it's just open-mindedness and willingness to listen.
Pasquale, who did you talk to?
We didn't talk to anyone in that, but the problem there is when it is about your community, how you want to handle your community and how you want to do your activation, that should be on you. You should not, that's the way I think about it at least. You should not ask out for advice because you know your community, or you should know your community. Token-wise, most of the games, or most people in Web3 have never launched a token. And there's a whole market of shady stuff behind that, and things that you have no idea about if you are just coming into that. And on that, I would maybe listen to a bit of advices from, as you said, market makers, investors, because they launched 10s, 20, 50, 100,000 tokens before you. And you have no idea about what you're doing. So that's the scary part, because launching a token is not as easy as you would imagine.
Okay, guys, great. Thank you very much for all being here, and hopefully everyone learned something.